So it does say here, when building this model, the engine cowling is closed, miss out steps 1 to 60. Go to page 61. So when we get to 61, that's if you want the cowling closed. We're not going to have the cowling closed, so we're all good. I may go a little off-piste. Because I want to paint this all in one. I also want to paint it separate from these engine bearers. But I also want to paint as much as I can in one, ideally. And just see what is possible. So this line I have to attach when this goes on. There's no way around that at all, unless I cut that piece, which I'm not going to do. These, again, I'm reluctant to do right now. It's just whether I can do other parts of the engine without having these on. And I think, like these brackets, yes, I think the fuel lines will go on without interfering in the exhausts. I think actually the front, I think that's the oil cooler, I'm not sure, the bends. I can't put the wiring loop on because that goes through here, so that piece really need the wires on first. So I think I'm getting to that stage. I can put on this piece. You can do that. We're going to put in these brackets, and we're going to put these fuel lines on, I think. But I'm not going to put on the exhausts or those shrouds just yet. And then we're going to do the painty things. Just look ahead a little bit further. It's always worth doing. Okay, so I've also got this piece. I think there's one each side. Can those go on? I think they can without interfering in anything there. So with the Q frame, we also have that little piece for up here. Again, it's keyed to go on there quite nicely. Then we can also put on the machine gun shrouds. Now I'm doing because I'm doing scheme E, which is the G5, the pressurized version, has slightly different shrouds than the G6. So there are different parts which have these scalloped pieces for the G5. So just need to make sure you get the right ones. The version you're doing, and you do really need to know whether you're doing a G5 or a G6 before you start, because there's several of these pieces which are unique to either version. Now of course you could leave those off until you decide, but at some point you're going to have to make a decision, so that's just earlier might be better. So there we go, very nice. Now looking ahead to those parts that I can actually put on, we've got two brackets. First of which is this H4. Here, like so. on. On the other side, GmbH3. It's exactly the same way. The other side. Then going to go underneath. Get these pieces, which is a slot in to that rear piece on there, just in there. I don't knock it off every time I touch it. Would be good. Same on the other side. So, now this coolant tank together. Nice positive fit. But I'm going to leave that off the engine. That does fit on the front here. Quite nice. There it goes there. But I'm going to leave that off until I'm going to paint that. I'm going to paint that aluminium. So I'm going to spray that separately from all of this, because this is mainly black. Now, being a G5, it does have the compressor, which is driven by the engine, which is this little three-part assembly here. so. This actually attaches the rear of the engine here on this little, these two pins there. That is why you have two sets of cowlings in the kit, because this piece, as you will see, sticks out from the engine. And it sticks out by some way. And that requires see, this is the normal G6, and it lacks a bulge here to accommodate that compressor. That's the only difference, or the main difference, between the external appearance of the G5 and the G6. We also have these coolant tanks, which I can make up. These fit on this little ridge here, and sorry, the other way around. They lock into that piece, and down there like so. Again, they need a little bit of cleanup, and they also need spraying. Those are mainly RLMO2, so those will be sprayed separately. So one thing I wanted to show you on these as well is that these pieces, they have undercut attachment points, but the undercut is actually just by this ridge, so you have to be careful because you don't have a lot of room to undercut that. So placement of that sprue gate was not the best, but it's not the end of the world. These are quibbles rather than anything else. Again, any tank like this is going to need a little bit of cleanup, so we'll do that. So I relented and decided to do these pieces and put them onto the engine, and there's a few pieces to note with this. So there are some bits of flash, as you can see from that, and I think it is flash because it isn't on the other side. Also, there's a mistake in the instructions. These are the various exhausts. The instructions refer to them, I'll show you here, as H2. These are not on frame H. These are frame G, so these are G2 and G1. And again, you can see there are some little bits of, I mean, that was an attachment point, but this is kind of just on the end where you have to actually attach them, and they do need a little bit of cleanup. There's also a little bit of sinking in these parts. You can't see it very well here. And some of them it's more pronounced than others. So you will have to clean these up quite a bit. This seam on them is deliberate, don't shave that off. It is a design part of the kit, and it is reflective of how the actual exhaust looked. But there's going to be you're going to need to do a bit of work on these. It's nice that they've got that they're open, and you can always open those out more if you want more of a scale effect. But yeah, there are a couple of little slips in this. But these parts look pretty nice, but as they are mainly going to be black in this area, I'm going to put them on, and then I think I'll minimise the amount of faffing about we have to do later with different attachment after pieces are painted, which presents, you know, challenges of its own. G1 and G2 are different, so they are handed basically because these are angled obviously to go on the bank, and these are angled so that basically they are flat to the side of the aircraft, more or less, when they're attached. So let's get sticking a bunch of these. You kind of do have to clean them up all the way around because they fit pretty snugly in this part. So there's not a lot of wiggle room. So they kind of do have to be cleaned up well, because they need to sit and seat, you know, 90 degrees in there, otherwise they won't be at the right angle. They're pretty pleasing when you get them in place, but you are going to take a little while on these exhausts, I think. See, this one has actually a hole, sink mark, so not so good. That's also from the other side. So unfortunately, because these were on G2, sorry, on G frame, and Airfix does not provide you with a frame layout saying which parts you do and you don't need. I thought these were maybe optional for, you know, a future variant, so I cut them all off thinking they were spares, and then when I got to H frame I'm just like, wait a minute, they're not here. And I was like, oh, okay, they're all the ones that were on G that I've just put into my spares, so I had to fish them back out. Only the spares that I've collected for this kit, not my general spares. That would have been a nightmare. So don't do that. The parts on frame G are parts you need. There are no separate parts. See, they look good. They look really good when they're on. You know, they look really the part. I'm going to clean them up again once they are in place, because it's difficult. They're awkward parts to sort of get your fingers in. You'd have to have the fingers of a small child, a dexterous small child, to be able to do these really well, I think, before they go on. I'm doing it as best as I can. This wasn't too bad in terms of cleanup on the end, so. Now, one thing I have just noticed is that all of these parts that I've been putting in there have this slit in there, whereas this one, which is for the other side, is solid. So I'm wondering if that identifies them. You know, I think it does. In which case, that's really nice. So if you mix them up, parts G1, which are referred to as H1 in the instructions, are solid at the back here, whereas the others, G2, actually have a hollow in them, so you can identify them even if you've clipped them off the frame. There is no reference to that in the instructions. So it's a nice little design feature, but if you're not aware of it, you can't really utilize it. See, it's a little slit in the end there. Oh wait, no, that is not true. It's that not doing what I just said. So scratch all of that. Because that is definitely that part. Okay. Well, I thought it was a design feature. It's not. Again, you can tell when they're in the right place. You know, and looking at this array, you know, they all line up quite nicely. They look pretty good. Now, which is the one I've missed? I guess we'll put them in this side, and then we'll know, right? So far, I think my feeling about the kit is that it looks really good. It looks really nice. The design of it, I think, is fantastic. So far, there's a few things which I think, why did they do it like that? Like these pieces, why did they put, this is the leading edge of the wing root. Why is this incorporated into this piece? I would have preferred that not to be, but I don't know at this stage. You know, there might be a very good reason for that, which I'm not aware of. So accepting at the moment that Airfix, you know, the Airfix designers understand what they're doing, which I think they do. It's a nice kit, very well designed. The gripes that I have so far, minimal gripes, all really centre about India and in the Indian production. Whoops, I almost lost that. I think that's the last one of these. I think. Is it? I think so. Mold release agent, I've got a really good example to show you. No, that's not that one. Such a pain having to work it out rather than having cut them off the frame correctly, you know. But when the instructions tell you, oh, they're on this frame, it's like, oh, right, and there's no frame thing saying, hang on a minute. You know, you can look at in advance and say, okay. Now, yes, if I checked all of the frames, I could have seen, oh, these are the only ones I've got, so that must be wrong. Kind of don't expect to have to do that with a brand new kit, flagship kit, you know. Again, it's a minor gripe, but it's just, as I've said with other Airfix products, it just is indicative of a larger policy of cost cutting, you know, not double checking, not having the time and money to do that. And, you know, mistakes do slip through. As long as it doesn't really affect the final result, I'm kind of okay, but it's just, once it happens time and again, you know, you have to think about, what is it? Why does this keep happening? You know? It's going to be typical if I finish the one I started last first. Let's see. Place your bets, folks. I think it's just managed to save itself. It was a 50-50 on the last two pieces, and there we go. That's so. I mean, that's the view from the rear. Really nice the way that looks. The alignment's really good. There's nice, you know, the bolt detail on the exhaust manifold there. That all looks great. A little bit fiddly to get there. A lot of cleanup, and the error with the instructions is annoying. Plus, you know, the production thing here, having that. I think here we go. Look at that. I've managed to get the one with the holy sync mark the same position on both. Not intentional. Also, unfortunately, because of the way these are going, that sync mark is on the top. Now that is covered, thankfully. But it's not ideal, you know. Hey ho. Right. Let's get these on the engine. So they mount on like so. Don't think there's anything particularly stopping us putting those on. Before we put the engine mounts on. There's nothing special there. Obviously the engine mounts go behind these pieces. So it's a little weird having this structural piece of the airframe on the engine. It feels odd, but as I say, I don't know at the moment what the design rationale for that was. Hopefully it reveals itself at a later time. I would have thought just having this section on the engine by itself and then having this as part of the wing or the fuselage would have been better, but I stand to be corrected. But nice assembly.